It is recording now.
Oh, there's Tom.
Looks like people are still joining.
Does anyone know how to get rid of this background on it?
Yeah, if you go down to where your video is, where it says stop video, click the
Yeah.
little arrow up and you can go to choose virtual background and you want to pick none.
Oh. No,
You look like a Corona ad there, Pat.
Unless you want like, you know, the Northern Lights, you can put that in too.
There we go.
Yeah, now I'm in my office. I wish it was on that island.
Pat, is your studio still out in the garage like it was when I visited with you?
That's exactly where I work. Yeah,
Yeah, good.
yeah. I got a little painting room and a little carving room.
That was about 30 years ago. It's hard to believe.
Oh, was it? Oh, it couldn't have been that long.
It was. I was working on Birds of Prey, and we were filming in Cambridge at the African Lion Safari.
That's right. I remember that.
Yeah, your dad was there and stopped in.
Oh,
Where does the time go?
yeah, yeah. That's amazing. Didn't seem that long ago, but
Yeah.
Well, I guess, you know, it's a little bit after 1, and I see a number of you here that are part of the panel, so I think we'll jump into this. Thank you all, first of all, for being here. This weekend has been, I mean, you've probably heard me say this in other Zooms at this point, some of y'all, but it's just been overwhelming, the response we've gotten, you know, such a challenging time, and you know, all those things we hear all the time. It's unprecedented, challenging, all that, but it is. It's a crazy time to try to do some sort of big convening of folks, and we really miss seeing all of you in Ocean City, but this has been just phenomenal. I really appreciate everybody being a part of these Zoom sessions, checking in online, you know, with the videos we're doing, and you've all been very generous with your time and supportive, and I appreciate it. For those of you that I don't know, by the way, my name's Kristen Sullivan. I'm the executive director at the Ward Museum, and I am thrilled to have a fantastic group of world champions, and I think most of y'all are also living legends here with us today. We're gonna just talk to these folks and learn a little bit about their history and career as carvers and learn through them. And I'm gonna guess with this group of folks, we'll also go off script quite a bit, and we can just have a fun conversation and just, I don't know, enjoy the opportunity to get to have this many world champions together in one place. It's awesome. I also want to introduce here Christy Clattenburg, our events director. Can you say hi so you show up, Christy?
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Remind us, we're packing up birds today for those that are local and picking up. So we've been running around today.
Christy's been running around like crazy for weeks, months, years, I don't know, forever, putting this together. So big shout out to Christy for all the work she's been doing for the Ward World Championship.
Well, thank you.
I also want to introduce Ray Valiant-Gillette. Ray is our relatively new curator and folk life program director. So she's not had a chance to go to Worlds herself yet, but has been helping out with some of this. Ray, can you just say hi so folks can meet you?
Hi, everyone. A lot of you are familiar faces from the Zooms that I've been hosting, and just wanted to thank everyone again for being here and making this better than we could have anticipated. We couldn't have done it without your support.
So the three of us will be moderating this and just sort of jumping in with questions as needed, and we can let the conversation go where it will, but we'll be moderating the chat as well. And so if you all look at the bottom of your screen, if you're on a computer, there's a little sort of a call out box that says chat underneath that. If you click on that, a chat box will appear and you can type things into there. If you have questions for any of these world champions here today, feel free to type that into there, and Ray, Christy, or I will read that. Oh, and there's Rachel Simpkins, our events assistant behind Christy, who's waving. And anyway, so we will be moderating that and we can ask questions on your behalf. I think this is probably an informal enough thing that if you've got questions along the way, feel free to unmute yourself and jump in. But we have just a phenomenal group of folks here. So I'm gonna stop talking because you all are not here to listen to me. I'm gonna go with who I see on my screen, sort of in order here. I see Tom Christie, world champion, living legend, Lynn Branson, and Del Herbert, Dan Burgett, Pat Godden, Larry Barth, Floyd Scholes. Who am I missing? Tom Horn. Who am I? Christie, do you see any other world champions that I'm missing here in the list? I'm looking through.
I'm looking through, I'm flipping through, and actually I was pointing everybody out to Rachel because everybody's probably spoken to Rachel, but she has not got to meet everybody. So we were just doing.
I think so that you can kind of get to the front of the screen. I'm going to have each of you say hello, and I'm going to just ask a question of everybody, and I'll kind of go down the line, and we can do questions from there. Anyway, but just so that we get you centered on screen, I'm wondering if you can tell me all about the first time that you won at the world level, what the piece was, and maybe what the experience was like. And because he's in my top left corner, I'm going to start with Tom Christie.
Okay, thanks. That would be 1990. I won the Lemon Steve Ward single decoy competition, and that was a huge thrill. 89 was the first year I went, so to be able to win that following year was a big thrill. The first time I won the world rig was another big thrill, and that was 93, the first year that the world rig was in existence, and those were memorable years.
Sure, now you're kind of a master of the world rig. This is great. Del Herbert, we'll go to you.
The first time I won was in 1994. I had been coming to Ocean City since about 87, I think. At 94, I was really a big year for me. I took second in the shooting rig, which was the first time I had entered. And I also won Best of Show in the LP division and in the S division. So it was a big year for me, 1994.
Exciting. Pat Godden.
Camera shy.
Pat Godden, are you available? When was the first time that you won at the world
talking to me?
level?
You're talking to me.
Yes, please.
Okay, all right. Everything froze for a second there. My internet's too slow. The world level? Well, I hit a bird at the show. Paul Burdett brought it actually in 1974, and I wasn't at the show. The next year I did come, 75, and I had 3 or 4 decoys just in the single decoy category in the open class. And then 76, right after the 75 show, I decided, well, I want to enter the world pairs because I saw all the excitement around that, and the inspiration I got from seeing the carvings in the world pairs. I think it was Jim Foote had won in 75, and that's what inspired me to enter in 76, and I won that year in 76. And I still think to this day I was kind of fortunate to come out on top because there were individuals like Tam Brunei and Jim Foote and several other people that actually were people that I really admired a lot. And I was a youngster at the time, a kind of a rookie upstart carver, 23 years old, and it's amazing, those memories of certain things in your life, they stay with you forever, and that was one of them. Remember that year. That was and of course how many years later I'm still doing it and enjoying doing it.
Still winning.
We're glad you are.
Well, I tell you, I try harder every year, and I think there's going to come a time when, I don't know, maybe my physical skills might slip a bit, or I'm going to do it as long as I can. It's a job I'll never retire from.
When I met Pat in 81 or 82, I was impressed with how good he is and how down to earth he is, just not this earth. He was so good. I've been a fan for a long time, and Pat's modesty is to be admired, because he's had probably as much influence on all genres of this art form than anybody I know. Truthfully, he really is one of the true greats.
I appreciate that, Floyd. I don't probably look at it like that, but
Well,
coming from somebody that has proven themselves to be a great carver, I appreciate that.
well, I speak for many people, I'm sure.
Well, Floyd, when was the first time that you won Worlds at the world level?
Well, I confess I haven't. I'm proud to be part of this elite group, but I have yet to win an official world championship. I've got a pocket full of awards, best in shows, seconds and thirds in the world, but I have yet to come away with a decorative life-size best in world. So I'm proud to be here, but not yet. I don't have a ring to prove it. I'm still trying though.
That's all right.
Next year, you just wait next year.
It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. Your work's so impressive.
Thank you. Well, keep knocking at the door, I suppose, but we'll see. Who knows?
Lynn, I think first and only woman who's won at the world level. Tell us a little bit about your first.
Well, I'd been coming to the Worlds, I think, from about 1994, but my first world win was 2010 with Phantom. And it was quite a wonderful moment and something I'll never forget. And I just kept coming back afterwards. And while I'm talking, it's so wonderful to see everybody. It's just marvelous.
Excellent.
Let's do it more often.
Well, we watch you quite frequently.
I do what I can to keep the spirits up, that's for sure.
Oh, it's great what you do.
Tom Horn, I see you over in the corner there on my screen. Welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe what was the first piece that you won at the world level?
First piece was 2005. It was a toucan with a tarantula, and it was my third year entering, and I didn't think I had a chance. In fact, I was told by a lot of people I wasn't going to win, and when they called my name, I think I almost fell over. I was in disbelief. So that was my first and probably the most exciting, time ever at the award.
That's great. Larry Barf, I don't see your face. Are you still here? I know that you almost missed being called when you first won.
Yeah, I'm here. The first time that I entered was 79, and I didn't win, but I entered world class, and that was a milestone. And that happened to be the first year that the show was in Ocean City at the convention center. So in my mind, that still rings true as my first world class year. But the first year that I won world class was 85. Yeah, 85 with the Snowy Owl, and that felt good. Yeah, you're right. I just about missed it. I was out wandering in the parking lot because I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle the, my heart was just pounding, and I was wandering the parking lot. I could not be in the building, and somebody came out and said, "They're announcing it, get in there." And I did, and I won, and it was wonderful.
That's great. Dan Burkett, are you around here as well still?
I am.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Can you tell us about what your first piece was?
I first went to the Worlds in 89 and fairly quickly figured out that I wasn't as good as everyone else, and obviously couldn't paint very well. But a real critical thing for me was seeing the Arndt's quail piece in World Interpretive. And I think it got second that year, I forget. But anyhow, that really turned me on to Interpretive. And since I couldn't paint well enough to really be in the other things very often, I focused on the interpretive, and after having my only ribbon was a second in novice, and I kept advancing through the ranks, thinking that I was getting better, and I got some honorable mentions. But then I won world in 2001 with a white-throated Swiss piece, and that was extremely exciting for someone who didn't have an art background, and to be it's as Gary Yoder says, when you win the first time, you don't really believe it, and it helps to win a second time, and then you say, okay, yeah, I have to admit that I'm pretty good. So anyhow, that was the first time was 2001.
And I'm hoping I didn't miss anybody here. I think Christy, I'll turn it over to you.
I think Tom Harris was there somewhere. Where is he?
Tom Horn's sitting there patiently in the Hollywood Square upper right on my
I
computer.
already went.
There he is.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
You fell asleep, Lloyd.
How's my project coming, Tom?
Oh, good.
All right, we had a question in the chat. When you guys are all traveling to the competition, how do you pack your carvings so they don't get knocked around during the trip? Packing was a big question amongst everybody this year. So the more advice, I think they would all appreciate that. Who wants to go first?
I will.
Okay, Tom.
I've shipped stuff all over the world, actually. And I typically will take it and wrap it in strips of bubble wrap, the fine bubble wrap, and till I basically have a ball. And it's pretty indestructible. And then I pack it usually in peanuts. And a lot of times, if it's because the work I do is lighter, I'll put a wooden, I'll build a Luan crate to go inside a cardboard box so it doesn't look like a wooden crate. Because I think they try to throw around that more than a box. So that's typically how I ship mine.
Anybody else?
I use a lot of foam to pack the birds. I have a UFO store out here which makes mattresses and things like that for motorhomes, and they sell the cutoffs of the foam. So I go buy a bunch of foam cutoffs, and I actually try to cut the foam and actually make a little nest for the bird. Unlike Tom, I don't like peanuts. Every time I've used peanuts, first off, they're messy and they migrate on me. So I just like the solid foam much better.
You put the peanuts in a bag and then they stay, they're not as messy.
I've done that.
Yeah.
I often make, actually, most of my major pieces, I go through quite a bit of engineering to design customized plywood boxes for them. And sometimes, especially pieces that disassemble, sometimes I'll have multiple boxes. Sometimes I can incorporate two individual components of boxes inside, and say one box inside of another that hold different parts of the piece, and then they're packed inside of I'll custom form a foam outline or form that the bird will sit down into. And for bases and stuff, I'll cut little wooden corners with felt pads on the corners to protect it. And then that'll fit down real snug inside. And then with a little pressure on top, that keeps it from moving. I'm always thinking that I'm not necessarily always going to be hand carrying these things. So sometimes they'll end up being shipped. So I want them to be someone else to be able to figure out real easily how to put everything back together, once it's in the box, it should be secure. Though the time when it's most at risk is when it's outside of the box or when you're packing it. Once it's packed, it's, not much is going to happen unless a forklift truck drives over the box.
I just wanted to mention, I do gunning decoys, so they're not as fragile as the decorative pieces that these guys do. But I always, when I ship, try to include some digital pictures in a sequence for whoever's packing and unpacking, because like Pat said, that's the time you pull all the stuff out of the box, lose the sequence of how it goes back together. So just a helpful tip, I put some digital pictures and a sequence in there so that whoever's repacking knows how I put it together.
As a former curator, thank you very much.
I'd like to hear from Larry Barth. What do you do, Larry?
Well, I'm sitting here thinking I'm best to not answer this one because so many of the times I've showed up with the piece not done yet and I'm still working on it. And all I do is spread them out in the car with as much space as possible. But that's getting it to Ocean City. And oftentimes it's not done or it just got finished and I just give it as much space. But and that's because I've run out of time. If later, I usually end up building a box that it can be shipped in. And I really like the rigid foam and cutting a well out that receives the bird. And then that's inside a sturdy wooden box. And that's in my mind. In my mind, there's a big difference between a hand carrying box and a shipping box. And hand carrying boxes can be very informal, but a shipping crate, which takes all worries and concerns out, mine tend to be the bird fit into a foam well, and then the danger is in someone unpacking it other than you. And so the good instructions and the very clear instructions are very important. And again, even if you're building that box, make sure it's got a lot of space. I've seen pieces that I think are in too small a box. Bills and tail feathers are too close to the edges. Make sure it's got lots of room.
If memory serves, in Roger Schroeder's first book, Wildfowl Carving, part of Larry's chapter in that book was devoted to him packing very carefully and very smartly a pair of loons, I think, in that early one back in the 80s.
And that was the same sort of thing that Pat was mentioning, some foam or some felt blocks that lock onto the base fit inside a sturdy wooden crate. But I prefer to hand carry. I think it's a great, wherever I'm going, especially if it's a delivery to the new owner. My preference is to hand carry and touch base with them and get it to them in person. Even if it's a piece I could ship, I'd rather hand carry it and make that contact.
Del, thank you for enlightening us to the Roger's book there.
Can I jump in and talk about the experience of shipping from Canada? I could write a book on it. I had lots and lots of issues from shipping from Vancouver Island, and learned the hard way not to take it with me. Well, most of the pieces are too big to carry, but so now we always ship with FedEx. But the one year, this is just a bit of a funny story to tell you, is that I thought I'd be really smart and get a custom crate made. And it was really a fine crate. And I think the piece weighed about 50 pounds. And when it got, and I took it with me. And so going through customs, I was taken with a big red flag to the side and taken in a back room, and they opened it. And the custom officer said, only a Canadian would have square-headed screws. Okay, nobody's laughing, but you don't know that you guys obviously don't have square-headed screws. Anyways, he finally got the top off, and peanuts were thrown everywhere. Well, I also learned never to use peanuts again. And so now it's shipped from here overnight with FedEx. And they've always done a great job in getting it on time.
In the early 90s, I did a series of tropical birds for collectors in Venezuela. And I would take some of these finished pieces, a couple scarlet macaws and toucans that I did when I was actually living in Venezuela. And the security, the first time I was going through, you push a button and a green light comes on. And they call you over, they either let you through or they open up the box. And I had a large scarlet macaw in the box that looked like a dead macaw. And boy, they thought they had a gringo dead to rights. They were going to arrest me until I had to convince them that it was made of wood. And then each successive time I'd come through customs, they'd remember the tall gringo and they want to know what I was bringing through because I'd have to put on a show. And there would be my very less than patient wife in the background waving her hands that we were late, that we had to go. The ride was waiting and nothing I can do. I had to put on a little show in Venezuela for the customs people. So they thought they had me, but I slipped through. True story, by the way.
Somehow it doesn't surprise me that, Floyd, you enjoyed the center stage and gave them the show as you always do.
In Spanish as well, so it was quite fun. They got to know the El Gringo Grande.
Of course you did.
Hey, if you can't have fun, why do it? Right, Lynn? Right, Lynn?
Right.
You had a better experience with customs people than I did. I had some work shipped. I shipped it to the Netherlands for an exhibition, all through FedEx. Like Lynn said, that worked like a charm. And when they returned the work, they sent almost everything back FedEx, but one piece they shipped US mail, and it went through US customs, and it was no bird, it was just the base, which made no sense to them. And they hacked it apart with a screwdriver, destroyed it, found no drugs inside, and it showed up in my mailbox absolutely destroyed without any record of it having gone through customs, which was completely illegal. You know, I went up to my post office and said, "What's this?" And they said, "There's no way that this can arrive to you without a customs inspector's stamp." And they didn't stamp it, which means they won't fess up to what they did. And they said that they would go to bat for me. I was clearly wronged, but they said the most that you're going to get is a letter of apology. And in their world, that's huge, but that's all you're going to get. You're not going to get compensation. So it was just a absolutely miserable experience with US customs.
Mm.
So I would, if I was shipping internationally, I would absolutely go FedEx overnight.
In college, they called me Mr. FedEx because when I went over a girl's apartment, I absolutely positively had to be there overnight. So.
And the one thing that we learned was that if you don't ship overnight, it stays in customs for, like, if you ship for 2 days, it'll stay somewhere where somebody will look at it. And right. if you ship overnight, then it flies through. So we learned that the hard way, which is more costly if you ship it overnight.
Yeah.
So I know we've got a few, at least a couple folks who have never been to Worlds here, who are carvers and are interested in becoming competitors. For you seasoned world champions and living legends, what advice would you give to somebody who's coming to Worlds maybe the first time to compete?
Well, I'll tell you what, I would tell anybody, and I've told a number of competitors before that I'd never been to that show. And sometimes I think people are intimidated thinking, oh, this is the world championship. I surely can't be competitive there. But then I tell them, look, there's levels of competition for everybody there. So, you know, it's just a great experience, and you get to meet people that you've probably heard about a lot, and you actually get to meet them in person. And almost everybody will talk to you, critique your work, give you advice on things, and you know, it's something that I don't think anybody regret going if they've never been there before. They never regret going to that show. You know, I've only missed one show since 1975, and every year I go, I look forward to it. And boy, I sure missed the last 2 years. And
I saw the one question about registration, and it's very simple. You just stand in line. Pat Godden doesn't get to go around you because he's a multiple-time world champion. You stand in line like everybody else. You wait your turn, and it's very well organized, so you don't have to worry. The people will show you the stations to go through until you get your entry on the table.
So the aspect of the world show collectively is more a learning experience than I would say a competition. Competition does hone one's focus to do bigger and better or better work, but it's the learning exchange of ideas, it's the camaraderie, and it's the mutual respect everybody shows for their other work is what I find just so enlightening. And I always drive home from Ocean City exhausted but filled with ideas and hope for the upcoming year. It's the beauty of the art form is the camaraderie and the mutual respect everyone has for everyone else. And I think I can speak for many people when I say that. Good group.
Great group.
Yeah, I miss you guys terribly. You know, knowing guys like Pat and Larry, my God, when I met Larry, I was impressed with how down to earth he is. 40 years ago when I met him, just not this earth. You know, Larry's
Long time ago.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
We were kids.
Yeah. In fact, when John Sheeler passed in '86, I believe, we were standing there and Bob Googie made the comment, John died at the age of, I think, 62. Bob Googie said, well, the old guys had a good run. 62 is not an old guy anymore, at least not to us.
No.
But
that was there was something about those early to mid 70s, and there was a group of just passionate people or carvers that were interested in birds and just wanted to create great representation of birds. And we were all young people coming on the scene, and you don't see that today. And that's a bit of a concern. We're all seem to be the generation that we're in right now seems to be the one that the generation that's we've been hanging in there waiting for the younger carvers to come up and kind of take over.
well, the whole dynamic has changed. When I was young, I couldn't wait to watch American Sportsman on TV and hunting. I grew up in a family of hunters, duck hunters and outdoorsmen. And you just don't get that feeling socially anymore, that it's that socially acceptable to talk about hunting. And that played into it a lot when we were younger. National Hunting and Fishing Day and the federal duck stamp. There were so many avenues that fueled this fire of this traditional art of bird carving.
We have a question in the chat asking, do you carve year round or take a break during nicer weather? Is there a carving season?
there's definitely a carving season for me. I find that the summer is difficult to enjoy from the wrong side of the glass. I have to be outside in the summer, and carving season are the seasons. The best carving time is the winter, because you can enjoy winter from the inside of the glass, just looking out over that peace and serenity and being warm and working. And I tend to work hardest during the winter, also hard in spring and fall. But and that's why Ocean City has been such a good routine for me, because I work like a dog up till that Ocean City deadline. And when Ocean City has happened, I kind of collapse carving wise and am entitled to take time off. And that becomes sort of the summer. So I think of carving season as the colder months.
I retired after 40 years in manufacturing just in 1989, right before the pandemic hit. So I'm kind of in my honeymoon period of carving full time and just enjoying the heck out of it. It's fun to be able to create full time now in the art form that I love. I'll probably get tired of it, but right now it's been great and really been enjoying it.
I remember John Sheeler once. He was a painter, an industrial painter, not a fine art painter, as a vocation before the carving took over. And I remember reading an article in which he was now carving full time. And I remember him saying in that article, every day is Saturday.
I remember that well, yeah.
Yeah. That was a good way to put it.
Lynn Forehand once said every day's like Christmas.
Yep.
Yeah, my wife has pointed out that we used to have a weekend that you weren't working. So you have to be careful about that because it can be consuming. So striving for a good balance.
Well, when you work for yourself, you're never off. You're on all the time. I carve all year. I love it, and vary my projects. I've got a guitar underway right now, another electric guitar with an owl, and just balance. I always have 3 or 4 projects going at any given time. Having done this for a living for 41 years now, the burnout factor luckily hasn't come into play yet. But Larry pointed out once. He said, in the winter and early spring, we hurt ourselves getting work ready for Ocean City. No matter how much time you have, you're going to use every minute. And Bob Googie would show up looking like an owl the morning of registration because he'd be up all night in his hotel room. He'd arrive with gesso birds, and he'd be up all night long painting. And it's just the way it is for most of us, except Pat. Pat will be out hunting before the World Show.
Yep, we laugh about Pat. We figure Pat has his birds in their boxes a week before the show.
I know, and it pisses me off.
That's probably true. I set my deadline a month before the show, and I always meet my deadline. So
I don't know how you do it. You always look so rested at the show, and we're all, wiped out.
I don't know. I'm just a little disciplined about that. I don't want to get behind, so I set my goals way ahead.
I bet in grade school your classmates hated you.
We have another question in the chat. We have another question in the chat. A lot of you judge. So the question is, talk about judging. When you're judging and you see your style or techniques used by other carvers, how do you feel about that? Like, what's the feeling you get with that?
Flattered, I guess. I think the beauty of the World Show is you come to learn. So you borrow a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and incorporate it into your own style. I think it's great. You could see Larry's influence, Pat's influence, and of course, Bob Googie's influence in so many pieces, and Dale's. Everyone has a little part to play in this, and that's the beauty of the art form, is everybody shares and they're very generous with their ideas and techniques.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I would say it's rare that you're going to get somebody that can duplicate what you've done, but take pieces of it. I've used Pat's patterns books ever since I got started as reference points. So there's some things that show up that are probably similar to some of his style, but I think we all develop pieces from here and there and there and there, and it becomes your own style. And to me, it's a compliment when somebody pays you a compliment by wanting to be able to do what you do. So, and never look at that in a bad light.
No, I agree.
And I think just about everybody is willing to tell you where they are today, because tomorrow they won't be there. So
Good point.
we can tell everybody how we got there, how we did that and all that stuff, because tomorrow we're going to be somewhere else.
Yeah. I remember when the seminars became a big deal in Salisbury. Eldridge Arnold, who passed away a few years ago, was a driving force in the world of decorative bird carving in the 80s. And he was totally against the seminars and the teaching, because he said it was the goose that would kill the golden egg, or the goose, you're going to kill the goose that laid the golden egg because you're giving it all away. And I totally disagreed with him on that. He was adamant that he thought the seminars and the teachings were a bad idea, but he was, I think the teachings have really contributed to the elevation of the art form overall in a very positive way.
Yeah, I agree, but I also see Eldridge's point. You know, Pat talked earlier about our generation, and it was quite a few individuals who were all driven by the same passion to carve birds, and we all kind of came into it at the same time. You know, this is a lot of people who aren't with us anymore. You know, Ernie Milbat, Bob Googie, it just so many people that all came on the scene at the same time, and everybody brought their own vision with them. And that was the beginning of, I would say, this whole thing. And I do think that, and what I enjoy about that is everyone solved problems in their own way. And that's the downside to seminars or even competitions, is that it does tend to homogenize the work. Instead of going to the hardware store and wandering the aisles trying to figure out how you're going to make feet, you can now look at the videos and take the seminars and find out how to make feet. You don't necessarily figure it out yourself. And so that's all fine, and it gets more people carving, but it's all part of a learning curve. And I think what you need to be working toward is a point where your work is your own. I think that's important. I think that, you know, if you have a carving hero and you're trying to make a bird just like them, then the best that you're going to be able to do is get people to say, wow, your bird is just like so-and-so's. And I think that's to be expected early in the game, but I think you reach a point where you'd kind of like people to think of your work as your work, not someone else's. So it's not all good. There's good and bad to it. And I think you need to find that balance point, and it's different for every individual. But I think that creating original work is important.
Sure is.
We have another question in the chat. It's kind of a two-parter. The first part being, do you ever self-critique your old pieces? And if so, have any of y'all gone back and modified or changed them up at all? And from the same person, they ask, what are ideas that any of y'all may have to encourage young artists to take up carving?
I can
Yeah.
start. I rarely look backwards. So the decoys that I have that I made in the 80s, I still have a few of those, and they're good reference points and they're good memories, but they're not very helpful. And I don't want to go back and modify those because they represent me at a point of time and have a lot of good memories the way they are. So I don't do much of that. I do a lot of self-critiquing. And I think that's part of the success I've had is I'm never satisfied with what I'm doing. Dell kind of mentioned it, that, you know, you're always trying to move to the next place and improve. If you're a competitive person, especially, I like winning, but I'm my own worst judge in terms of rarely satisfied with anything that I've done. So always trying to strive to do something else. From the second part of the question, the younger generation, we've talked a lot about how to do that. And I think there's some attempts have been made with the Ward Foundation NEA National Endowment for the Arts program. I mentored several people through a couple of years in that. And I think some of us have been talking offline, how do we mentor more people nationally? And I think youth is a part of the answer, but I also think a lot of middle-aged and retired people would like to learn to carve too and have the resources to be able to do that and to travel so I think it's a combination of things, and I don't have all the answers, but I do share Pat's concern that there's a lot of gray-haired people involved in the hobby or the art form, let's call it that, right now, and we need to freshen that up. But I think we can leverage it by getting more people involved of all types, not just young people.
I don't have much of my early work. In fact, I have almost none of it, but I do go back and critique it because every project I do, even if it's something I've done before, I go back and redraw the pattern. I spend a lot of time on the drawing table. And what I do is I go back and look at my old patterns. I try not to reproduce them, but that I think is a form of self-critiquing. So I can't recommend drawing enough. A lot of the newer people come up and say, well, I can't draw. Well, you sure as hell you can draw. All you need to do is start drawing. So I recommend drawing a lot. When you're doodling on the phone, instead of doodling S's and grapes, doodle feathers. So that's my form of critiquing. I go back and redraw the things that I had done before.
Anybody else want to talk about, whether they self-critique, look back at earlier works, Floyd or Tom?
I've done that a few times where sometimes early on is I got critiques at the World Show, and I came home and looked at things, and maybe a couple years later even I've done some fairly major edits on some pieces, and I think it's good to have an open mind, and after you look at things for a while, sometimes you say, well, maybe you can improve things. So having that open mind is good.
Well, always learn. Each piece you do, you learn from, and you just apply that. Not every rocket hits the moon. I mean, there will be a lot of misses, but for every 10 times you get it wrong, you might get it right one time, and you add that into your little quiver of experience and improve upon that. I don't really like looking at my older work at all. I try to keep things moving in a forward position all the time. Because when I look at the old stuff I've done, I cringe and I think, yikes. You know, so always forward.
I don't shy away from making any changes while I'm working on a piece. I'll make drastic changes. I have a whole box of birds that are finished that have some texture on them, and I decided, nope, I gotta do that better, and I'll start it over. But so while I'll make any kind of changes and restart during a piece, once in my mind that piece is finished, I don't ever want to work on it ever again. You end up doing that every once in a while because something may break and you have to work on it. But when a piece is finally finished, I'm done making changes. If I want to do something better, I'll deal with that in the next piece. And I find that right now I'm always trying to figure out what to do next, subject wise. And in the recent couple years, I've started considering doing the same subject of something that I might have done years and years and years ago, because I think it would be interesting to actually have a fox sparrow that I did back in 1982 and a fox sparrow that I would do now. I can't go back and fix the bad proportions in the head of the one from 1982, which is actually a piece in my own collection still. And it bugs me because the head is so wrong. But rather than fix it, I'm thinking about doing a fox sparrow again, the improved version. I find myself wanting to revisit subjects that excited me years and years ago.
Well, looks like we have a few minutes left. Does anyone else have questions? This is a rare opportunity to have all these folks here together. I welcome folks to unmute and ask a question if you like. Everyone a second here.
I'll ask one. Is there one thing that each of these our masters have learned over time that was the most important thing that they've learned that they'd like to pass along?
Reference material.
Reference material and be your own worst critic, and don't ever be satisfied. If you finish the piece and you think that's it, I can't do any better than this, then you've climbed the mountain and there's nowhere else to go. So inevitably I'll finish a piece and I'm never satisfied, and I can't wait to get on to the next one. But just always be optimistic and try to raise the bar a little bit each time. Challenge yourself. Right, Lynn?
I would say to always stay true to your own vision and always have fun. Remember that, to always have fun.
Right. Don't take it too seriously. And I'm trying to loosen up a little bit because it's just this whole thing has me so stressed out. But hey, Pat, are you guys still locked down in Ontario?
We got a big lockdown now.
Wow.
Yeah, the government was threatening to have the police fine us if they stopped us and seen us with somebody that we didn't live with. But the police refused to do that. They already said we're not going to enforce that rule.
And we're the same way in BC right now. We have a total lockdown.
What a time we're in.
Yeah. I thought it would be getting a little better, but it's getting a little worse right now.
Wow. It's funny. I'm down here in Florida, and it's like restaurants are open, everybody's out. I've been vaccinated. Most everybody I know has, but man, I want to go to Canada so bad. Get up there. It's just a very strange time we're in, and I think we all have to do what we can to lift everyone's spirits and to look forward to brighter days ahead and a world show next year. And I think I speak for everyone. Christy, you and your gang, thank you so much for all your efforts in keeping the momentum going, the spirits high, and it's not easy, but I really take my hat off to you on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a great team here. We have a couple more questions real quick in the chat. We have a first timer for the show. They want to know what you guys do all day, to think back to the first time you came to the show and what you did. We have another question about whether you mark the piece as where you were as a carver at a time. And then the best advice for a new carver to improve painting.
Study Pat Godden.
Oh, which one do you want me to answer? I guess with painting, your first instinct when you first start carving, you want to match all the pigmentation colors you see on the bird. And, you can develop the skills to mix the paint and get it accurate. But you need to think way beyond that if you want to bring your work to a little higher level. There's all kinds of things. Feathers, most feathers, except dark feathers, are quite opaque, but light feathers are quite translucent. So you can create really interesting effects, make it look like you can see through layers of feathers. So they say that brings your work to a little higher level. Incorporating the feeling of light on your work, and working with different values, warm and cool colors to contrast against each other, with shadows and highlights. That just brings your work to another level. I look a lot at paintings that artists work in 2 dimensions on a canvas, or how they create the illusion of 3 dimensions on a 2-dimensional surface. And everybody can, not everybody, but your instinct is to think, well, I've already carved the 3 dimensions. I shouldn't have to paint that. Well, if you paint it, your work becomes so much more interesting and dramatic in some cases. And you're actually sculpting the shapes that you already carved. You're sculpting them with the paint. That's something that people should strive for, rather than just trying to mix and match the colors of the feathers. You want to go beyond that. It's easy for me to say that, but it's something that people should strive for when painting their bird.
Painting is such an important component of it for decorative carvings, the realistic carvings, because I think you can carve a beautiful bird. I've seen beautiful pieces in shows that were ruined by a really bad paint job. On the other hand, I've seen mediocre carvings brought to life with a superb paint job. So I think painting truly does bring it to life. That's where the time should be spent, yet it's the one aspect of this that tends to strike fear in the hearts of a lot of up-and-coming carvers. I don't know very many artists that approach each bird with total confidence. We work our way into it. We wade into the shallow end of the pool, and then it pulls us in. Our confidence builds as we work on the piece. But painting is so important.
I think one of the things I do is, when I'm carving a bird, I'm painting it in the back of my mind. So I'm doing little things with feathers. I'm moving feathers around to take advantage of a color scheme, things that create little interesting focal points on the bird. And I think that's something with experience, you're able to start doing things like that. And that's the key, experience. You get to not only learn the bird, but how to take full advantage of what's in that bird and create something that's really interesting and dynamic and just something that's people find great to look at. They probably don't know why they like it, but there are things in there that you've done to make them like it. and it registers subconsciously, I think, in somebody that's looking at the work.
Compounded by the fact that the age of the bird, the time of year, the diet of the bird, how healthy it is. There are so many factors that contribute to the accuracy and presentation of the plumage. Some birds, their plumage changes completely within the course of a calendar year. So there are a lot of challenges, and that's what keeps it interesting.
For a new carver, if I could get back to the question, for a brand new carver who doesn't know how to paint, you got to start somewhere, and it doesn't take much. There's so much reference material out there, whether it be Pat or somebody else's book, but invest in something that allows you to at least get a start, because once you get, it's that getting a start that's so hard, and there's no confidence when you're beginning. So you need to know, what kind of brushes do I start with? What kind of paints do I buy? And here's a couple of how-to steps. And then you don't copy that, but you can leverage that knowledge to the next bird that you paint, and you step into it with a little more confidence. To me, painting is a series of steps that give you confidence that then you can take and leverage to the other carvings that you do. So that would be my advice. Find a few of those get started references, go for it. If the better approach is get somebody next to you that knows how to do it, and maybe take a few lessons. But if that often isn't available, there are tons of resources to get started.
That's what I was going to say. I think I understood the question to be coming from a beginning carver, and this is where I'll take a little bit of difference from some of my compadres. I think seminars and instructions are great, and especially when you're first starting. If you go try to do it all by yourself, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to repeat the mistakes. Taking a seminar, for instance, Tom Christie did a 2-part session on painting a gad wall for this session. A beginning carver, you couldn't get anything better than that. Just look at it and try to do it. And the other thing I'd say is a friend of all of ours, Tom Matus, has this term, time on brush. The time, if you want to learn to paint, you need to paint. Spend time on brush and you'll get better.
Yep. Thanks, Dale.
I would agree with that. I think that painting, there's a little bit of basic knowledge that you need to have, but it ends up being experience. Every time that you paint, you build experience, and that makes you a better painter. And if a beginning painter tells me that they're having difficulties and they don't have confidence, I tell them that's exactly what goes through the process for me too. I don't think you ever stop struggling with painting. You just struggle on a progressively higher and higher level, but it's always a struggle. And it's part of the process. I think it's the most difficult part of the process, because it's the time where you're doing the most number of things in your head all at the same time. You can't break down painting the same way you can break down wood burning or feather carving. You're using everything that you know all at once when you're painting, and it takes a lifetime to get comfortable with it. But even when you're comfortable with it, you're still struggling every single time. So best thing to do is get on with it. Just get your feet wet, because that's how you build experience. And the more experience that you have, the better you're gonna, the more tools you'll have in your toolbox to think back on and rely on.
I speak from experience. Pat, you recognize these?
Oh yeah, you.
This is from a Pat Godden seminar 100 years ago.
That wasn't that long.
When you get a chance to take a Pat Godden seminar, Take it.
Years ago, can I jump in? Years ago, I took a couple of courses from Bob Googie and I was doing decorative carving. And I painted a life-size bald eagle. And well, that was it for me. I switched to interpretive, where I play around with stains, and I find that very rewarding. Something you never know what it's going to really turn out like, because each piece of wood that I use is different. So you never know. So it's trial and error. But although I still enjoy some part of painting, I like the stains better.
And it sure shows.
And we've got a question, and actually the person who asked the question read my mind. I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about interpretive carving and like what are some of the factors for you that go into what the piece ends up being?
Well, for me, it's all about the wood, because I have collected wood all my life, probably since I was a child, and I see something in the wood and then I like to bring it out. So I don't draw. I will use chalk, but I don't draw. Sorry, Del. And I just jump in, and I love wood. I love to show the grain, the natural shapes, and that's where my passion is. It's in the wood.
Dan, what about you?
Yeah, there's two different ways. Sometimes I get an idea and I'll take a block of wood and I'll have my way with it. The thing that I guess I like more is what Lynn's talking about, where you find, you know, a piece of swirly grained wood and you let that grain and the attributes of the wood guide you. And of course I like flowing motions, and then you get into for me, the critical part is the design and composition. And if I can let the lines of the wood, you know, those lines and negative spaces and all those things go together and help lead me to what the composition is, that really helps in that whole design process. And that you know, it helps me end up where I end up.
Dan, can you tell us what Christy's Clattenburg's holding up there? Christy, can you make a noise so you show up on the screen?
Sorry, I was still muted.
Dan,
I'm not seeing her.
That has an
Oh,
IKEA stamp on it.
just talk here, and I have Dan's piece that he entered in miniature interpretive this year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a dozen small birds, but you know, that's actually kind of going to the same thought that it was the creative process starts at a certain point, but then your thoughts go in a lot of different directions and you end up with different birds or different whatever. And so that's kind of my thoughts going in 12 different directions.
Eldridge Arnold used to call you guys the pot smokers.
Living on Vancouver Island, we always get called that.
John Sharp. Forget it. I won't go there.
No.
No, Floyd, you're famous for accusing us to be using a lot of wacky weed in our design process.
I've seen some of those pipes you've carved. You're pretty good. Anyway, you got to have a little fun with this too. Don't take it too seriously, and share everything you can. And you know, the best is yet to come. I believe it.
The one thing it's good is the internet, because I know I get emails. Having a website, a lot of people will write and ask questions, and that's a good way, especially if you're not going to any of the shows now, that you can converse with other carvers that are needing some advice or your opinion. And it's like this Zoom. It was pretty frightening to think of doing it, but it's such a great way to see everybody. It's just terrific.
Lynn, you look beautiful on camera. Hey, guys, also, you know, this year has been a tough one with the passing of Ashley, of course, and Tan Brene. And also, but to congratulate new grandpa, Larry Barth. So, you know, there's a lot of joy and a lot of sadness, but we move forward always.
Yeah, it's my granddaughter's birthday today.
Hard to believe.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And
I
Pat, we
have a new one.
Pat, we won't
I have
even
a
go
new
there
one
with you.
I'll have a new granddaughter probably within a week,
Wow.
and she lives in Alaska. And my other two grandchildren were born in Louisiana. So I've got 2 Cajun grandchildren and now 1 Alaskan.
Wow.
Yeah,
And you're stuck in Canada.
that's right. I can't get to either place.
Well, I think I must have been married very young because I have a granddaughter that lives in France.
Wow.
And she's been working there now for about 3 years with the university, and they are in total lockdown. She has to sign a form if she wants to go out and get groceries.
Wow.
Well, as I've been saying, wash your hands.
All right. Well, I just realized we're having so much fun. It's that we're actually over time. I want to be mindful of everyone's time here. But thank you so much to all of you for joining us today, and especially to Pat, Del, Tom, Lloyd, Larry, Dan, Lynn. Gosh, I hope I'm not missing anybody. But to all the world champions and living legends who are willing to share your time and your knowledge. And it's just so good seeing you all here. I can't wait to see you all in person. Fingers crossed, you know, in Ocean City next year. Thank you very much. Stay healthy, wash your hands.
Love all of you.
Take care.
Bye.
Stay healthy, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely.
Carving
A
too.
big party next year.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody.
Bye-bye.
I'm not leaving. I don't know how to get out.
There should be in the bottom right, there's
It
a
says
little
leave.
red box that says leave, although you don't.
I don't want to leave. I miss you guys. So, Lynn, let's talk. How's Greg?
Who does your vacuuming, Floyd?
Me. I bought stock in Shark Vacuum. I'll tell you what, that's quite a company.
It's one of the great things about carving in summer is that you can do it outside and there's no dust, but you're in Florida, so you have the lovely weather. But here we have so much rain that you can't always carve outside. But I love carving in the summer because it just eliminates a lot of dust.
Well, my degree is in industrial arts, and safety and dust extraction was a very important part of what we worked on when I was in college. And so I spent a lot of time designing and working with designing a really good dust extraction system. So I do keep it to a minimum.